Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second/other Wednesday night in Birth stream. I'm Brillian of the 2MK team, and today, as you can see, we are playing under Night in Birth. We've already had some for the day, and we are now moving into the basically NA afternoon. Although you're free to join if you are in EU, it's just that obviously you might be asleep. I've had my morning warm-up due to the previous stream. While I don't expect it to change a lot given how rusty I am, it has definitely put me back in the mood for understanding how Seth should flow in particular situations. And hopefully, with my buttons correct entirely now, I won't have the same issues as before. If you are anywhere on the east coast of the US, the west coast of Europe, or just a little further than that in either direction but have really good internet, feel free to jump in. We'll let you know if it's too terribly laggy. So for now, I'm going to be practicing escaping from this character. Missed it. That was a good choice there. But it's still not the thing I should be doing to break through this wall, and my opponent is very good at keeping that wall up. As it goes now, I'm not absolutely sure what I set all of the best settings to, but there should be no limit on the number of times that a person can play in a row. It should be 2 rounds with 1 rematch basically. Win 2 matches and it's over. I'm really trying to find a way to deal with this particular situation without just using the orb, because eventually I'm going to face someone who prevents the orb from being used in that particular way, and I won't be able to cover. But I should definitely be thinking about whether or not I need to use that to prevent the match itself from becoming a certain type of thing. I've never actually had to analyze this matchup at this level, so I can't be sure whether or not it's a good or a bad idea to have to use it that way. Technically, I think I actually don't want it to fire off early either, because it doesn't do me any good. Okay, I should really be expecting that level of defense right now. Alright then. This one's probably going to be a bit more explosive than the last one, and we are expecting our other Orie to possibly join us at some point, but Honey Rabbit might not make it in for today. One of the main other things that Seth faces as a problem here is because I always react as if I'm supposed to be able to just use an air throw to get myself out of a problem, which is not going to work here. But I can in fact deal with these jumps if I actually pay enough attention, because he does have options for which button to hit to do it. I'm just so used to pressing down when I jump in other games because my characters have charge moves and require to do it. I need the air one for that, but who was gonna TK that at this time of night? Okay, that is the settings I intended to make. And so we move on forward. I was just about to say that there will be probably things you'll get to see in terms of analysis and execution. And here is someone with the execution to show it, I suppose. In general, staying somewhat in the air in this matchup for Mika is good, and as I noted, Seth isn't great at getting away from her, which is why you see the use of the orb coming up even here. Fortunately, it's not really as if the player is trying to get away in the way you're thinking of. I told them they shouldn't have given that character that move. A large part of what you're seeing now is something based on a way that Seth was buffed a little while back. Namely, that specific ability to do the move in the air and keep those combos going. Basically, they created new combos for the character. I don't have them yet, but this person is living up to their name and doing the execution required to do it. But let's look outside of that for now, because obviously it doesn't do me much good if I can't do the combo anywhere, right? So from that perspective, what exactly is happening? The flow is still mostly the same, the damage is just coming in at different points. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. I really don't. But there is, overall, a way to avoid being hit by that, because the setup involved in landing the starter of that combo is a little bit less lenient than many of them that you'd actually deal with. Seth can always pop you into the air, and Seth can always do that move and the follow-up chains now, and of course because of the additional aspects can just fly for a while. But we're not looking at that part yet. We're looking at how to avoid getting hit in that way. And mostly, it's the same thing that was happening before. If you try to defend against this character by blocking for too long, he'll eventually just teleport behind you one way or another. Most of the time, your best option is to go forward, because while you will get hit, if the player is looking for a way to set up the correct combo style, they're not necessarily going to be ready, and it's harder to do the timings. So, strictly speaking, it's better for Mika to continue doing what she was doing before, with the main problem continuing to be the orbs. Keep hitting stuff, and work on when you have the opportunity to move forward, just take it almost every time. Because it's the orb that's your actual problem. And of course, like starter, this stuff, but that's just defending against pressure as a generality, right? Seth's relatively short range means that if you are not daring you're going to get stuck in these situations and end up taking single hits. Well, rather dealing single hits only. As I was mentioning yesterday for our Melty Blood stream, Unist is not a game where you definitely lose damage just because you continue hitting. You get to keep on doing the damage as long as you have the correct setup, and it makes the game very flashy. For some characters, it makes the game extremely flashy.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
From the other Seth side, your situation is usually much better because your ranges are exactly the same. But you still have the same problems. You still have to make sure that certain hits don't even happen. And because you actually have limited tools for avoiding them compared to other characters, it can be a little bit rougher to stay in position. It is also a problem because when Seth's good wake-ups are challenged, a lot more damage tends to come out of it. So I'm normally a bit more stuck against other Seth players. Once they've set up the situation they want, crazy things happen. And I'm literally doing things that I'm not even consciously thinking about right now. I've twice this far been confused by what character is on which side, not because I've actually Seth moving so fast, or rather my opponent moving so fast, but rather that whatever it is that awakens in me when I have this matchup literally leads to me doing moves I can't normally do, and combos I can't normally deal with. It's probably because I just kind of absorb what they're doing and think about things differently altogether. Oof, that was not a confirm I thought anyone could do. Because if you think about it, they did not know I was going to be exactly there. The actual answer to this is the same. I just don't want to do it. No. Y'all really should not have given this character this move. See? Definitely shouldn't have. I think my complaint about this buff is that it really doesn't change how neutral plays. You never use that move in that position. It's almost entirely just, I can do longer combos than I could before. Which is useful in some ways, for sure. Obviously, more damage is more damage. And you could argue that a lot of what Seth needed was damage, but it does bring the game much closer to the singular one-player game style of play where you don't really do anything. You just take a hit and then die. It's also one of the hardest moves to time the execution of in the game. Not to execute, because it's just an uppercut, but to time the execution of this move. I don't think it's just me. It's definitely not something you just do, and I'm not throwing words again. Although honestly I should just play a different character at this point, because this is not going to lead to what I want. There's also that you have to be careful of. So I guess I'm supposed to do that where I normally did the dive, but again, this is not really the thing I'm aiming for today. You can, however, use it to stay out of situations you wouldn't otherwise want to be in. It just doesn't lead to anything. This time... This stream will be going on for about another 35 minutes, so I think I'm done with that for now. And I'll try something slightly different. When you're playing counter characters, one of the best things you can do is recognize when you're going to put your opponent in a mental state where they want to hit a button to get out of whatever you're doing. And you're about to fail or forget or not really know how to finish whatever it was you were going to do anyway. But for this to work, you must either frustrate them or bring them to the conclusion that you are keeping pressure going longer than you actually are. Though one of my problems with this particular character is that I probably would need different buttons to play, since all of my built-up muscle memory for how to do counter moves is now based on my R1 button.
生身では想像も及ばぬ手合い、深き戦いであろうよ。その力試させてもらおう。
ファーストクローズディバイド。
まだまだ無駄だ。ここだ。まだまだ。
For anyone wondering why this is my secondary, Geese Howard.
セカンドクローズディバイド。
The main reason is that this character isn't quite as fun as Seth most of the time, and is a lot slower, not necessarily considered great for the purposes of this game's style of play. But you can change some other aspects of how the opponent moves, based on the fact that you have the counter available to you at all. Okay, I feel like trying to get through Gordo stuff is probably more fun on Seth. But I guess it also depends on the Gordo player's style, and obviously their level of skill in particular ways. I'm going to assume that this person's quite good and I should play at max immediately. Based on their ranges, looks like a yes. Ooh, that did not. I was not expecting that to reach. This player's guts level is too raw for me. I like it, but man. Alright, that was definitely more along the blood pumping leaf on side of things. Gordo's main problem against Seth is that there's not a lot of spaces you can be sure you should attack at. In fact, that's one of your best options when things are far apart, simply because, as I've demonstrated, it's not exactly a thing I'm expecting. And that's not just me, because you can't move beyond certain positions. You can be baited into using the scythe when you shouldn't, and being punished for using it. But Snatcher is a different beast. It covers almost all of the space in front of him, and even though I now have that way of using a separate attack, that attack doesn't actually go far enough to always escape Snatcher itself. So now I must watch my opponent's meter pretty hard. I still have that habit of trying to air throw in that space. What that really tells me is that I should find something that Seth does against the same position, but I think I'm just supposed to dash forward. Mika may need to watch out because of having basically the same style of weakness. There are things Gordo can do that cover too much space in front, and Mika is even more straightforward than Seth in that regard. And that jump isn't something she has an answer to because of the way her uppercut works. So it's most likely going to have to be the same sort of, should I dash forward on wake up or do something else? I would say this is generally harder for her as a whole because she tends to be a relatively straightforward character and doesn't have many ways to deal with it. A very high version of her dive punch can get you through there because it hangs in the air long enough, but it only really works if Gordo was going to try to hit you out in the first place. That said, it's one of those things that he doesn't necessarily deal as much damage to and has to work much harder to deal with, so that's probably worth considering regardless. Knowing the exact height from which to do it, I can't really say. Fortunately, she can play fairly defensively against this character altogether, so it's not terribly overwhelming. But a lot of the damage she needs to try for comes from much closer, where he actually does fairly well. Gordo isn't necessarily a zoning character. He just happens to have zoning as a long range thing he can do really well, and some close range stuff he can do really well. But less of the I'm hanging out right here in the middle, so his close buttons tend to fall short, his long buttons are too long. Y'all know this archetype. Fortunately, it does at least mean that he's not terribly easy to punish, so you get to take a lot of your actions more or less confidently, let's say that. But this is another one of those cases where there's just not that much to do specifically. You literally are supposed to power through and believe in your standard of however you do things. On the upside, it means that the fight can generally just be fun in certain ways, and you spend your time figuring out how to do what you do, but better. Our Gardeau bot will in fact teach you how to defend against those moves you're seeing, if it's input correctly, but we have not trained on that in forever, so I'm not expecting to see too much of it. It does definitely help with general understanding of which moves are things you should try to do things against and which ones are not, which is never bad. But it's definitely inspiring to actually go train with it. Unfortunately, it's kind of a harder bot to input, because it's much more timing dependent than many of our Unis bots are.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
Might as well lose to my own team. I'm not gonna lose, don't worry about it. Gordeau is easily capable of destroying the orbs that Seth sends out. However, to destroy orbs is a little bit harder under certain situations. So I'm basically looking to create situations in which it's hard to destroy orbs. As for the defense part of this matchup, that's something I'm going to have to get back used to no matter what I do. Oh no, actually, I do have a solution to that and I've just forgotten it. I specifically taught myself how to do that too. But no one remembers everything, right? Dropped it. What you are technically supposed to do is jump back shield. Ooh, also not expected and very good. An absolutely affordable trade. For him it's easier to throw out Air B orb because it puts it off the screen, and basically, if you find just the right time to do it, you can somewhat get out of Gordeau's mind space for a little bit. That's the answer to that situation. However, Gordeau is a particularly sticky character in that there's no direct answer right after it, other than using meter anyway. I think I have one, but I don't remember what it is now, and it probably doesn't work in the way you're thinking of. You can generally work on pressure defense in this game, not against the bot, but against the Byakuya CPU. It is the most straightforward source of pressure that also has enough pushback to put itself out of the range of certain normals, so you end up learning a lot more about the interactions between your moves and other people's moves at different ranges when you're coming straight out of defense. Mika, on the other hand, is a character that can, with a lot of execution practice, do the instant air shield and then get out, because she can do her forward rocket punch and her dive punch in that situation and actually expect to win them. Whereas Seth has to do like a more complicated thing, or maybe the uppercut works now, I'm not sure. Not expected, but worked out. You can see that this person's inputs are also extremely clean, nearly no mashing for any purpose. Which is usually a sign that they've not necessarily mastered the character, but don't have the level of panic about what is going wrong. In other words, they have a deep understanding of what's happening, and don't necessarily feel the need to press buttons to try to deal with it, whatever it is. What we see Mika displaying here, at least in this part, when you're actually mid-screen, is something you have to get used to as well. Shielding in this game changes the pushback that you suffer from moves, and against certain characters it's really important to be willing to shield. But Gordo can always break through your shield by using the right move at the right time anyway. So you do have to consider whether or not it's worth risking that. It's still a mix-up basically. The question is simply, should you shield or not? Knowing when he's pushed himself out far enough that you could probably drop the shield and not get hit by the overhead is definitely something the bot can in fact teach you. Understanding the ways that one defends himself in this game, and the way those defenses change based on where you are on the screen, is things we've just put so many bots toward because it's the core of the game really. It's probably why it was such a hit, let's say, with Street Fighter players for a while, because it's just important that you have that as your main flow. You are going to get knocked down, there are going to be interactions based on those sorts of things, and without understanding exactly how to stop certain things from happening, you will more or less get put in a blender, even if it's not a blender at the level of most other games one might play. Ori is a little better off in that her uppercut goes straight up and therefore can be an option against Gordo's jump in the corner, but she doesn't have a good way out of the instant air corner shield unless we've got, let's say, winning Vorpal by a decent amount. And you already see the adaptation I was just about to start on. Gordo tends to need to throw more in this matchup. One of the pains suffered by facing against a high-low character of this caliber is that you really just don't want to be there to block anything. That is why you can at least consider trying to jump out in one way or another, simply because anything else will eventually lead to you facing the high-low mix-up. but being able to do that is at least somewhat helpful. The relative speed of Snatcher makes it difficult for Orie to actually use her Thanatos shield, the summon, as a defense against this character. However, she can use her force function if she thinks Gordo is going on the attack quite often, because he doesn't really have a lot of good ways to deal with it. It isn't that the move is all that difficult to beat in itself, but simply that she has aerial moves that tend to collide with his in advantageous ways for her. Therefore, she never has to worry about all that range she has on the ground, and can just shift around instead. When she has Vorpal like this, there are more options as well, because she can do the force function in different situations. That spacing right there, for example, is one where Gordo will have to go into a defensive mode if she chooses to be +C out. It's not usually a good idea to do it immediately after your opponent's pressure string has seemingly come to an end, because they're thinking the same thing. Oh no, my pressure string has come to an end. And therefore they're more likely to be in the state we're thinking about, where they're looking for the next thing that's going to happen. But if you really thought they were going to be waiting for you to for you to force function so that they could 3C it, or whatever it is that you consider to be the most useful attack over Gordo's head in that situation, it means that they were thinking about it and had something else to do. I can put this back to random, right? So we've got another 9 minutes of this stream. Tomorrow we will probably be doing King of Fighters. Ooh, I like this stage. Oh, I missed it. This isn't really an execution check, so I will not, devalue my opponent's play here by saying that they're forcing me to try things that are difficult. No, I'm choosing to try things that are difficult instead of doing the correct, relatively correct, easy answer. And I'm suffering for doing so. It's entirely my bad. Oh no, I forgot it does that now. Fine. Well, I can say, Raikiri's, that I look forward to giving you a better challenge on a day when I am probably less fudged on how to do these things. The rust is everywhere. Alright, let's bet. Bet 1. There's something I always forget about how to do the wake-up game in here that I'm not grasping. So I probably need to go back to basics and practice that too. There is a difference in timing how one defends against specific things in here. Oh, that didn't catch. Why is that combo so hard now? Then again, it's always been hard, and I spent all of my time practicing it because it's so hard. It is one of those combos in games where the timing for the next bit depends on the first hit. So you have to remember what strength or what interaction caused the first hit of the combo to land, and therefore lets you know what your opponent's state is, how high they are in the air, and what aspect of your move has just popped them into some other form. So it seems like I need even more practice with that one. Well, they've upgraded themselves to the hair that matches the area. Definitely inspiring. I'm sure you can see, even if you're not too familiar with the game, you can partially see how much more can be done usefully if one can defend against mix-up. And this is super important for characters that aren't really strong once they get off the ground. But Mika is our probably strongest defense player on the team in terms of Raw being able to block her way through things. This game is very fast though, meaning that not even she can probably stand up to Gordo doing this without lots more time with Gordobot. But at the end of the day, one has to deal with it. Generally, it's hard to say because you have to decide what type of person you are, and there's no way for your opponent to easily know how to judge that. I mean, certain games have better lobby stuff to talk about to tell them, but simply put, there's no way for this opponent to know whether or not her reaction is, keep doing that, I need to learn to defend it, or stop doing that or change character so I can learn something different. Or, you know, just leave if it's not the sort of thing you can handle that day. This sort of thing is much easier to deal with when you're actually like at a local or something and can just ask your opponent to either do or not do certain things, assuming that their goal was to in any way increase your skill, or, you know, just be sportsmanlike in particular ways. And of course they could just choose to not actually fight you anymore if that was not what they were into. We're now going into what is probably the last on-stream match of the night. I'm not necessarily sure that the lounge is closing up. But because I won't be able to guarantee anything about how much longer it will be going or even who will be playing, and I think it disbands if I leave it, though I'll probably just go AFK, you probably shouldn't assume that you're going to be able to jump in and get any more games.
退屈しないで済みそうだ。
So far, this first week of this sort of thing, although it's only halfway through technically, is going decently well. We throw out some rust to be gone and hope for the best. Oh, that was a force function jump moment, not a regular jump moment. Oh well. Looks like Omni Rabbit got all those confirms back suddenly. Muscle memory is a strange thing sometimes. Oh, that was probably an execution error. An unfortunate one. Tomorrow, King of Fighters, and it's not that we're rusty at King of Fighters, it's literally that we haven't had enough time to play King of Fighters to even get as far as to say we could be rusty at it. But we are fans of old KOF games. The team basically started playing fighting games together as a result of one of them, and therefore have a decent understanding of how one tries to play KOF as a whole. Though there is still a larger gap than we'd expect, even considering what the new game's mechanics are like. So you'll get to see some of that tomorrow. There will be no EU stream for this though. So you're only going to get the 7:30 Eastern stream for our King of Fighters Feeling Thursday launch. Our King of Fighters bots are also probably supposed to be dealt with soon, but I probably need to go on a long check through all of the things that are currently considered important in the meta of that game, especially now that it's somewhat stabilized at least. There's a lot of common stuff that you have to understand to play KOF correctly, and we're mostly trying to focus our bots around teaching that. Especially teaching it to people who are used to playing other games but for whatever reason want to get into that one. There is, however, a lot you can learn just by watching people, so there's some benefits there. Does he have to use super for that? I think that's what I remember. Orie in particular has some good options here because she is a character that has enough reach that she doesn't need to try weird things. She can choose whether or not to actually use a full guard and push the opponent back out. But you probably should have those reactions on point if you want to do it. That brings us to the end of our stream. Join us tomorrow for King of Fighters and next week Monday for... Actually no, I forgot. Join us Saturday for something. It's probably either Dead or Alive or Absolver, but I'm planning to choose the Absolver streams onto Sundays, which will eventually be replaced by DNF Duel once that game is released. This has been Rillian for Team 2MK. Good luck with your training and good night, everyone.
Comes to you.